"You're coming with me," said the lonely rancher to the woman beaten for giving birth to triplet girls, Wyoming Territory, late January 1877. High ridges of the Snowhorn Mountains. The wind was howling like a wounded beast. The first sound that caught Silas Grier's ear was not the wind. It was the sharp, high-pitched wail of something smaller, more fragile. He pulled his horse to a stop, snow crunching under hooves, and tilted his head toward the timberline. There it was again. A baby's cry. No, multiple. He narrowed his eyes and dismounted. The path hadn't been ridden in days. It cut through the trees like a scar. His boots sank ankle-deep with each step. He led his horse by the reins, listening, his breath visible in sharp puffs. The sound grew louder as he approached a clearing near an old fence post, half rotted and half buried in snow. And there she was, a woman barely upright, tied cruelly to the post with barbed wire, her arms bound behind her, skin torn, wrists bleeding, snow clung to her lashes, and the edges of her hair now frozen in place. Her lips were cracked, her face pale as death, save for bruises, blooming violet across her cheekbones. At her feet, 3 bundles, infants, newborns, no older than a day. One whimpered weakly. The other 2 lay silent, wrapped in what looked like the shredded remains of a nightgown. The woman's head moved slightly. She was conscious, barely. "Don't let them take my daughters," she whispered. Silas dropped to one knee beside her without hesitation. He pulled off his gloves and checked each of the babies. Breathing shallow but steady, skin cold, the kind of cold that traveled into the bone. "You're coming with me," he said, voice low, steady, certain. She blinked slowly, like it took effort to register the words. He took a knife from his boot and sliced the barbed wire. It had bitten deep into the skin of her forearms. Blood welled where the rusted steel tore free, but she did not scream. She did not even flinch. He wrapped his arms around her waist to hold her steady as her legs gave out. Her body was limp, heavy with exhaustion and blood loss. Silas didn't hesitate. He scooped her up, cradling her against his chest. Then the babies. One by one, he gathered them. He tucked the smallest against his coat, secured them using a thick wool blanket from his saddle. They barely stirred. The wind picked up, slicing across the open space. He shielded them with his body as best he could. His horse nickered anxiously nearby. Silas glanced toward the horizon. They had a half-mile back to his cabin uphill. Through snow, he adjusted his grip on Marabel, tightened the wrap on the infants, and whispered. "Not to her, not to the babies. Maybe to the wind, or maybe to God. You don't die here. Not on my land." He mounted the horse with care, keeping her in front of him, the babies tucked between them. She weighed next to nothing. The infants were lighter than winter rabbits. The cold had drained them all. Time was not their friend. The trail back was slow, the wind relentless, but Silas moved without pause. There was no time to ask who she was or what demons chased her. Only time enough to keep her alive. The cabin was dark when they reached it. The fire long gone cold. Silas kicked open the door, carried her straight inside, and laid her gently on a bed of quilts near the hearth. The babies came next. He set them in a basket lined with rabbit pelts, then turned to stoke the fire with hands that didn't shake. Not yet. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the tracks that led to her place of pain. Inside, Silas worked by firelight, silent and certain. A stranger had been left to die. But not here, not on his land. The cabin was no more than 4 wooden walls and a sloped roof, groaning under the weight of snow. But it was dry, and the fire Silas Granger had kindled now crackled with life. Warmth crawled out slowly from the hearth, pushing back the cold that clung to the corners of the room like a second skin. Silas moved with practiced silence. He hung his soaked coat by the fire and peeled off his gloves, revealing calloused, cracked hands. Middle lay unconscious on a bed of piled wool blankets in the corner. Her lips were blue. Her hands were wrapped loosely in strips of linen. She had not stirred since they arrived. The babies had begun to mew, low and weak, but alive. Silas filled an iron pot with goat's milk from a jug he had hidden behind stacked wood and placed it on the fire to warm. He found a small feeding spoon carved from pine and set it beside a tin bowl. Then he walked over to the woman. She was barely breathing. He dipped a cloth into a pail of warm water, wrung it out, and began cleaning the dried blood from her ankles and calves. The bruises went deep, mean purple-black swells along her shins. Someone had kicked her hard and often. Her knees were scraped raw. He worked gently, dipping, wiping, covering her legs again with the edge of the blanket. She did not wail.